All right, well, Fritz, I think you saw our virtual presentation we did a few weeks ago.
Yes.
Pretty much the same one here, but hopefully another new voice or two can add in some other ideas for potential sites. Um, so my name is Josh. I'm here with Chemtrack, and we're uh, doing this brownfield site inventory. We're going to be working with folks here in Dillingham and then also up in Aleknagik to kind of put together two tabular reports of a bunch of information for each of these sites. So kind of the purpose of today's meeting, looking for your input to help develop a list of sites of possible environmental concern in your community. This is what we call a brownfield site inventory. And this information will be used by local leaders in the state to prioritize cleanup efforts and secure government funding. So kind of over the course of the next 15, 20 minutes or so, talk about who's involved in this effort, all these different entities and the relationships. What is a brownfield site inventory? How does the process work? And what could these sites potentially look like? And then where are these sites in your community? And this is where we're hoping to get some of your input here. Okay, so who's involved in this? We've been talking with a bunch of different organizations, the kind of original folks that were in the ADEC's little group here. We had the city of Dillingham, Bristol Bay Native Corporation, the EPA and ADEC, Chemtrack is us. So we also have Tab, been super helpful with all this, the Alaska Sea Grant, thank you. But basically, this project is being managed by the ADEC, Alaska Department of Environmental Conservation. Navi there has been great, and she's kind of the brownfield program manager. That program is funded through the EPA. So all the money for this brownfield site inventory and any brownfield projects in Alaska are coming from that EPA site. But I believe it's Navi and the brownfield site program managers that are the ones like kind of receiving the grants, reviewing and kind of deciding how to allocate within the communities which projects get funded. And then we are just kind of facilitating the brownfield site inventory process as the environmental contractors. Quick little spiel about us, who we are. So we both work for this Chemtrack company. It's been around for 40 years. I think both of us are newer to the company, last year or two, but it is a small business. We have the end of our ADEC designation here coming up shortly, but we do a lot of environmental remediation and cleanup. We do some construction and engineering projects. So our values there: do no harm, respect others, make things better. And I think I said this in the online one. It really does feel like all of our meetings, we're kind of leading with those values and making sure that we're following those as we go along. And it does feel different than certainly a lot of the other organizations both of us have worked for. So we've enjoyed being part of it. Little photo of our team there. We got a lot of dogs in the office. It's always fun. Some of the places we work, other brownfield programs we've done. We do a lot of more of the remediation side. So later on in the brownfields process, once they're doing the cleanup and the site assessing, is what a lot of our involvement has been. We're also doing a technical assistance grant like this one in Bethel right now, ADEC and Aleknagik. I think we're going to head out there probably next month to do something similar. So having some same meetings out there.
I bet the food will be as good.
I don't think so. Probably our Airbnb would not be as nice either.
Yeah, probably not.
That's okay. I'm excited to go out there. So a little bit more specifically about this brownfields program. So the goal of the program is to provide technical and financial support for communities to assess, clean up, and then plan reuse of known potentially contaminated sites. As I mentioned, the ADEC brownfields program, that's the one that we're going to be really working directly with. They're the ones that are actually kind of managing and implementing all of these projects and programs. What is a brownfield site? And so this is an important designation. we're talking about these potential contaminated sites. The brownfield program, like many of these programs, has kind of specific requirements, and they're like, we're specifically focused on these types of sites. The definition of a brownfield site, a property which the expansion, redevelopment, or reuse of which may be complicated by the presence or potential presence of a hazardous substance, pollutant, or contaminant. So this kind of more simply is like an abandoned or underutilized site where there is potentially a source of contamination there. I think Melissa and I were talking, and like kind of the original intention of the brownfields program, it's like probably like many things in federal government, was designed for something in the lower 48, and we're trying to like pigeonhole and apply into an Alaska context. Imagine like in an inner city or like a corner property that's just been sitting there vacant, and it's like really highly valuable real estate, and they're imagining like, yeah, we're gonna have a reuse redevelopment plan ready to go for this particular spot. But that also, like, you know, here there are spots like that that can be redeveloped and reused. We're talking about one, the Bingman property, potential example, right? At the entrance to your town, very valuable, useful land in a highly trafficked area that could be a great resource and use to the community.
Is it just land or is it buildings as well?
Buildings as well, yeah.
What
So
about homes?
homes can be, yeah. I think it's when you get into that, it becomes about like who is the responsible party. Like,
Yeah.
if it's a private landowner, that's not usually application of the brownfields program. I don't know if you can speak to that a little bit.
Like even if it got foreclosed upon?
See if it got foreclosed on and like the city knows it or something,
Yeah.
that does work.
Yeah.
So I think that was
So
one.
they weren't the ones who did the contaminating.
I mean,
You can't be the person who's responsible for the contamination and get money to clean it up. Right, so you can be,
the federal
I spill
government's
paint thinner. You guys clean it up.
right, you have to like,
the federal government's not going to pay for like your neighbor's dump site in their backyard to get cleaned up, right? Like that's kind of their responsibility.
shit, there goes half my life.
Yeah.
sorry.
I know, well, we're,
that's all I think.
that's the other thing, right? Like, you know, the difference between lower 48 and up here, sometimes you're driving around, it's like, well, we don't have other spots to put it. It all kind of turns into these like
Right.
de facto spots, or like you said, all guards on the side of the roads, and trying to figure out like, okay, like, well, whose responsibility is this? How can we try and get this cleaned up? So that's kind of,
Fritz has his own raised too.
yeah, Fritz.
Yeah, I'm curious, would the presence of asbestos in a structure qualify as a brownfield location?
Yeah,
And-
if it is like an abandoned or underutilized site that's like not being utilized anymore, I guess if it was, you know, condemned or something as a result of this, was there a particular site you had in mind or thinking about?
Yes, there is. But let me ask another question first. Is there funding available for ameliorating that issue?
There can be, yeah. So basically, right, we're gonna be putting together this list of these potential sites, and then we're going to submit that to the ADEC. I think the ADEC will then come back to probably the organizations that we initially listed there, like the BDNA, the city of Dillingham, the native village of Aleknagik, and basically prioritize those sites. So like, okay, let's look through what we have here, what our potential reuse or redevelopment ideas would be, and kind of figure out which ones to pursue first. So that's actually this next slide. And Fritz, if you want to hold on to that site idea for a little bit here, I'll kind of finish with the process here. So the brownfield site process, the colleague over at the Copper River Native Association put this together and got permission from her to use this. I thought this was a really great timeline slide here. So we're really in this first step, right? We're identifying and inventorying the potential brownfield sites. So we're making this list, trying to put in as much information as we can so that when those different organizations are getting together to prioritize these sites, they've got a good basis to go off of. So that's kind of this first year. The first step, once they have identified these sites, just like many things in the federal government, there are many steps, many processes. It takes a while. That first step is going to be this phase 1 site assessment. So that's basically like a formal assessment to confirm yes or no, are there these recognized environmental concerns? So that's kind of stage 1. So that's something, you know, like we would go out, we usually do like a site visit, we go look around and look for potential signs of contamination. We're doing a lot of records reviews and history reviews to get a sense of what the property was used for. And that way we can like formally tell the federal government, like, hey, yes, this is an issue. It needs to be investigated more closely, which is hiding behind my thing there. Phase 2 site assessment, that's like, we've identified there is contamination. Now it's how much and exactly where is it? So, right, if that's contaminated soil, that would look like doing soil borings where you're going down and doing tests to see like how deep that contamination goes.
You might put in a well, like you talked about some well sampling earlier, and you sample those wells periodically.
Right, they have our landfill, they have
Those are,
monitoring wells.
Yeah.
Same sort of thing.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the phase 2, and then the next step, the actual cleanup process, that can look like, you know, removing soil. It can look like abating a building, like you were talking about, Fritz, there. Any number of things, potentially water treatment setups. And then finally, kind of the end of this brownfield process again is that like reuse, redevelopment, revitalization. So kind of the next step of like turning it back into something that can be useful for the community.
I'm, if I could say, offer, I'm reluctant to name this particular location, although I don't think it's a mystery in the community, um, without without alerting the the landowner that this might be added to a list. And I'm not saying that to be obstructionist, because I think this is a really important thing. But I think the landowner probably, you know, would prefer to be alerted rather and take advantage of whatever, you know, assistance might be available. But I don't want her to be taken by surprise, if you get my drift there.
Yes, I think that is not an uncommon sentiment for these types of projects.
especially in
And-
small communities.
Yeah, especially in a smaller community, I think it's kind of use your discretion on that. I would say, like we were mentioning, the brownfields is specifically for properties where we don't have a responsible party. So in that sense, like that person, if they are the landowner and they are the responsible party for that contamination, they would not be able to get funding for cleanup anyway. So in that sense, potentially might be worth you just holding on to that information for now. I don't know that this could necessarily help them.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, always a touchy subject.
So there may be a new landowner, but they're not the one that was responsible.
Correct.
That would qualify.
And there are some that,
But tab contaminates the yard, you can't say, oh.
Sorry, man, you're on your own.
yeah,
Oh, come on.
yeah. And even then, sometimes there are like, I know maybe you can speak to the like real estate transfer process more, like if somebody buys a property that was contaminated, but they
become
didn't
the
necessarily.
responsible party.
As soon as they buy.
They become one of the responsible parties.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Huh.
So unless you've done a phase 1 site assessment and gone through the all appropriate inquiry process, then you are now responsible party.
yeah. And
Wow.
usually if
If you've
that's
done your
no,
research
if
and
that's
that
it,
came up in the phase 1 process, then you're not responsible party.
yes. Oftentimes, you know, if there is a known contamination, that would come up if you're doing, you know, like a title search or something, like if I'm buying a new property or new house and it's already on a list of contaminated sites, there's gonna be an environmental lien against that. And so you'll be able to get notified through there. But if it were, you know, somebody had spilled a bunch of, maybe had an old UST underground storage tank under there that has just been out of use, nobody's touched it, and you buy that property, it had never been documented or anything, that could then come to you as the responsible party for that UST somebody else put in, right? Yeah,
Never been documented.
They're with the rest of your list, huh?
Yeah.
You can't sell me your contaminated.
yeah.
property.
And that's
That's why I'm not a homeowner.
yeah.
It's too dangerous.
It's not worth the risk. But that's definitely something that,
Here's some food. You want some food?
I'm thinking about. And-
Sorry, I didn't.
No,
want to
you're
interrupt.
good. It's okay.
They want us to leave sooner.
Oh, all right.
So glad.
Do you want me to, here, step out.
Yeah, you guys can.
Sorry.
You do. So then what are we currently doing in that inventory step? These are kind of the steps we're taking right now. So hosting community meetings like this one, we had the virtual meeting, similar one a few weeks ago. We are meeting with folks in Aleknagik, having community meetings there. I think we're gonna go actually this evening to a tribal council meeting.
Yeah.
We're visiting some of these potential sites. So the sites that you all bring up today or that were brought up recently, we've been going out to and starting to take photos of them, reviewing the records. So again, trying to see are things already on those contaminated sites databases, the UST databases that the ADEC has, the well logs, historical area photographs. So if you're like, oh yeah, this site, we heard a long time ago that it was used for a dump site, we can go look at an aerial photograph from the 60s or 70s and see pictures of those potential past uses. And lastly, kind of connected with all this, interviewing community members to get more information about particular sites. So what kind of sites fall under this definition? This is, you guys are probably familiar with that one. Doesn't look like that anymore. We got to drive by and see the nice cleaned up surface anyway. So the Bigman property there. This is a great example that's now been removed on the surface. There is still some concern. We haven't done any investigation as far as I'm aware of like the subsurface contamination, like taking any, right? You've got all of those, old vehicles, potential like refrigerant coolant systems, appliances that could have been leaking fluids into the soil there. So anybody that's going to want to develop or build on that is going to want some clear information about potential contamination before they go and invest in that property. So former shops, vehicle storage areas, old gas stations or fuel storage sites, unreported fuel or chemical spill sites, informal dump sites or landfills. That's a big one in rural Alaska, right? That's talking to like the folks yesterday about recently I was out in the native village of Taslina and I was talking to some of the older village elders and they were telling me about, oh yeah, there was that spot right over the guardrail up the road. We used to just dump all our old stuff. Like, oh yeah, that's exactly the kind of thing we're talking about. Like people might not be using it anymore as a dump site, but historically it was, and that could definitely be a potentially contaminated site. Canneries and waterfront industrial sites. So think if you look on the ADEC contaminated sites database, a lot of the old canneries in this region, like kind of all up Bristol Bay, are on that contaminated sites list. I spent some time out at Graveyard Point, familiar, kind of across the mouth of the Quejack River, which is an old cannery site there that has a bunch of contamination that's slowly getting cleaned up. So those are definitely big ones in this region. Former military installations, abandoned mining sites.
Military never leaves a mess. What are you talking about?
Abandoned sites.
They're very responsible.
Very
All the time.
Yeah.
Highest PCB samples ever taken in the world.
Oh my gosh.
I've been to doing, yeah.
Yeah. So there's definitely, and some of those, right, like the former military installations might not necessarily be on brownfield sites, but we could get them on an inventory and they actually would qualify for like a NALER, the Native Americans Lands Environmental Management Program. Sure.
Yeah.
It's something like that, but specifically for cleaning up of these military sites and particularly when they're already on, like usually INSCA, Chemtrak.
Which I think there is a couple, at least one here in Dillingham.
Yeah, I saw one on the sites database, I think over by the hospital.
Exactly.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's definitely a few of those. Abandoned homesteads can be one too, particularly like you're saying, once they've been foreclosed on.
Mhm.
So some possible clues or signs of potential contaminations. I mean, we kind of know what an old dump site might look like. The steel drums are a big one. Usually those steel drums are holding something that oftentimes is hazardous and contaminated. deteriorating above ground or below ground fuel storage tanks, oily sheens on surface water, hazardous material or household cleaning supplies, stressed dead vegetation in otherwise healthy areas. You can imagine like a big green forested area, and there's that one spot that for some reason everything's dead there. Like, oh, that could be something happening there that's not the same as everywhere else. With regards to the lead and asbestos, the pre-1980 structures. So one of the sites that Aleknagik mentioned was they've got an old church out there. It's the Seventh-day Adventist church, or on the Google Maps it was labeled as like Moravian church, but that's kind of been abandoned at this point, and it's got a bunch of, I think they said asbestos.
Taken over by the city, and now it's mold, I think they were telling us about.
Okay, and the mold, and then there were also had some contaminated soil issues on the
Yeah.
outside.
Would
So
mold count?
that was something,
It's not
I don't know.
clear necessarily.
I
I
think
haven't
it
had a
would be-
reason to look that up. Usually this couple has had their issues, so I feel like it's incidental.
Okay.
You know, I think they probably have lead-based paint and fuel contamination there.
Yeah,
Probably asbestos too, is my guess.
yeah,
It's a little,
yeah, right in this region, or anywhere in South Central or in Southwest Alaska, the mold is very
Fair.
big, it's in. So yeah, some additional possible sites that we're kind of doing more research into right now. So the Bingman property has been the big one. 308 Central Ave was one that got brought up to us. I think that's the Four Crows property, kind of right on the corner
Oh, great.
over there. That Cassandra had mentioned. The
That's one down by the harbor, Dillingham property you're talking about.
The Bingman property is, yeah, right by that. Mhm.
He was
Yeah.
talking about 308,
But then this one, 308 Central
by the
Ave,
or by the church, on the way to the old Moravian church, I think.
Is that the, Carlson property, who's called?
let's see. So last time I pulled up the contaminant safe database here, but Joel, just quickly, we could use that as our map actually.
I also wanted to share this, you know about this, the city of Dillingham has a particle viewer
Oh, okay.
that shows all the locations, like within city of Dillingham, and then you can like click on each individual one, and they can like tell you who owns it and what's there.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, so that was probably, I think, kind of our next step, once we have this list, will be to like go through and look at things like this.
Okay,
But that's actually a really great to know about.
yeah,
So this is the contaminated sites database. Have you ever seen this before, Mark?
No,
This is the ADEC, that's actually, we've been told, one of the most robust contaminated sites databases in the country, which is really cool. All of these different sites around Alaska, you can see there's a bunch of them. Zooming in on Dillingham here, the green diamonds are currently active contaminated sites. And the yellow circles indicate cleanup complete status has been achieved. And then the stars are cleanup complete with institutional controls, so some sort of like regulations or requirements for use or engineering controls that have been put in place. But zooming in here, so like you can see, like the Bingman property is not yet on this because those formal assessments haven't been done. Some of the other spots, I think, Central, one we're talking about, I think is this
that's,
property.
yeah, exactly. It's a really nice looking house, but it's like, obviously
yeah,
haven't been
that's,
used in a long
that's
time.
the, well, that's the old Carlson property. Dave Carlson and his wife lived there, and when they passed away, I think it became city property.
Oh,
There was talk about turning it into a museum,
yeah.
but I think because of some, maybe asbestos,
Contamination or something.
yeah, there was some issue with it. Cause I guess the place was like full of books and historical documents and stuff. I don't know whatever happened to it. I think, I wanna say it was Dogger But maybe someone else built a gazebo there. And there was some thoughts about turning it into some kind of city park or whatever.
308, so it's 30,
Yeah, so that's right across from the Fish and Wildlife.
total value $200,000.
No.
For the property.
You said,
0.67. I think that'd be a great spot for a coffee shop. Sit down coffee shop.
dude, good. Importance of third space in the community. Wow.
What's that?
The importance of a third space in the community. I wrote that first.
Oh,
It's like you have your home, you have your work, and then the third space is like the community gathering.
yeah, exactly.
Which you said is currently the airports.
Right.
So you said previous site owners, that was Carlson's
Carlson, but I think it was, became the city's.
family, used to be the city.
It doesn't show an owner on the website.
Remember what had happened to that Carlson property?
Oh, City of Dillingham.
The city's not worth it, I just think they had high hopes for it, but I think there's just a whole bunch of mold issue. I think that's,
Or is the house still there?
the house is still there,
It doesn't,
Yeah, the house is still there.
is that the house?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, we just drove past it the other day.
I was thinking.
No, there was- there
I
were.
know, I picture it being farther, like, central on that too.
Yeah.
Is it,
That's gotta be it.
did they get the designation of a historical site?
Oh, boy.
These are Alice questions, I think. She's very familiar with the Carlson property.
Mm-hmm.
Alice is the mayor.
Okay.
Alice
Yeah.
Ryan.
They sold everything inside of it, all the furniture, all the things.
They sold everything inside of it?
Only eating, so just by having cooking.
That's exactly what I was thinking. It read my mind.
I don't know about this formula.
Family. Oh,
As we zoomed in on this image, all the red and yellow and green dots disappeared. So I'm curious.
Yeah, so you can see some of the other active contaminated sites. So again, these are kind of like, these will be included in our brownfield inventory, but won't necessarily be eligible for brownfield status. Because this list is just every sort of contaminated site out there. So right, Dillingham Hotel,
What's this mean here?
that was a cleanup complete.
So if it has mold, is that considered a contaminant?
No, we just talked about.
Oh,
Yeah, right, it's like
Horrible.
everywhere in southeast, southwest, south central Alaska, it's, yeah.
Every boat.
But I that is a question we will check in on, is like, okay, this is. Again,
next
the
to
reason
Napa.
it's not being occupied is because of mold, maybe that can still potentially qualify.
it would be a wonderful visitor center, the museum, you know, that's got, I think it has.
What were you saying there, Mark?
Oh,
It's got a nice little gazebo outside, it could be a little park, if it's still salvageable.
That's Napa, right? That's Napa.
Yeah.
Okay. Cause a lot of this was, I think, dredge materials from the harbor.
Mm-hmm.
Were all pumped out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I built up a little spit.
But it said previous auto repair name or boat repair shop or something.
Yeah. So then, I mean, pretty much every tank farm is also a contaminated site. Close to it anyway, it feels like. So, right, that's something that's probably like a historic spill, they're still kind of managing and dealing with. Slowly getting through
So
the,
we got that tank farm, this tank farm, and then the power.
there, no, so they're clean for now.
And you,
This one,
Yeah, there was just $500,000 worth of repairs done
oh, wow, okay.
this year.
Um,
And the star means what now?
gas fee.
I left all the pots.
So the star means cleanup is complete, but there is an institutional control in place. So something that is like, you know, there might be still some contamination, but as long as we are following these kind of guidelines or restrictions on the property use, it's not gonna actually have an adverse effect on people. So like, it's not reaching groundwater, and it might be like, sometimes they'll put like a cap of gravel or something on it, so no humans are gonna contact it. And as long as it's not reaching groundwater, it's not necessarily having an adverse effect on
And that was the DOT shop, probably their old
Yeah,
underground thing.
yeah, oftentimes that's a big one. We could view the full file and stuff if we wanted to, but yeah, it's very.
Went over the maintenance area.
So every site has a full kind of description on there of what happened there, like a little narrative section, and then the timeline.
Was it being underground storage? So
Yep, so that's pretty common one for sure.
you don't have to have ArcGIS to view that file.
Nope.
With map, you know?
No, this is just, if you go to you can search ADEC Contaminated Sites Database. You'll find that whole map. And you can search by sites, or you go to the View CS map. You're just looking at that.
Okay.
So definitely a good one to know about.
So let's go out this way. All right. So I would suggest just following the creek valley, and you'll find all kinds of abandoned stuff that needs to be looked at. But one of the big ones is this right here. That's Soul Yard. If you drive by there, see all these buckets and barrels. Everybody they drain their oil and then they just put it there. And it's right next to Tabs Creek.
And my boat's right there too.
Oh, yeah. I hadn't seen that they actually updated the name on the maps
Look at that.
on Mill Creek.
You have it at Gusty's?
I saw, is it a sign that says no press?
No press.
I saw like a wooden sign.
That sounds like him.
There was a sign I saw when I was driving past it, because I think Melissa was like, oh, that looks like it would be something to go on an inventory. I literally saw a sign and I was like, I'll have to go look at it, I think it said no press.
Well, that's funny.
Yeah. And he's a really good guy.
Yeah, really nice guy.
Really,
And
really.
so that's the kind of thing, right, like if the conversation is like, that feels. It is active, it's being used.
Yeah.
It just sounds like probably privately owned thing, like. Might not be the right fit for this inventory, but potentially something for a bigger conversation within the community as far as like, hey, is this actually. How we wanna be storing these things or these materials. Cause yeah, it does, it
Do you
is.
help with finding ways to dispose of them then? Is that your goal?
That is something that our company does, like the goal of this project is specifically just to inventory, and to like get a list of these sites together for the ADEC. Yeah, I guess you missed the beginning of that part, so basically. We're gonna put together this list for the ADEC, we're getting all this kind of like formal information about the coordinates of these sites, the types of potential contaminants that might be there. Who the past landowners were, closest drinking water wells, things like that. We'll put this list together and give it to the ADEC. The ADEC will then come back to, I think, the city of Dillingham, EVNA, the native village of Aleknagik is a part of those conversations. And basically each community will kind of prioritize which sites they want to address now that they have this clear list to work off, right?
So this is the casting of the widest net.
Yes, and so
We
we're
want
meeting,
your sites to be in this first cast.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
yeah,
Even though that and several others are privately owned, they should get on the list so that when the BBs get around to coming up with a plan, they can.
The
he
BBs.
told us that they're.
No, it's not.
They're BBs.
Yeah, everybody's the BB.
Yeah.
Well, because their stuff actually goes beyond their private property.
Well, it goes right into the river that affects the bay, that affects the fish, that affects the, you know. You can pan out too, we can either go down the coast or up the Moon Creek. I have to stop calling it Squaw Creek.
What do they call it?
Amu, AU.
Was this the spot, I think you guys in our last meeting had talked about a spot where there was like some vehicle.
I think farther up, see, right, yeah,
Right up?
there,
Right there.
yeah. Over to the right, you see,
The
yeah.
pile of, I'm not sure, but I think the pile of old dead vehicles is further south on the south of Squaw Creek or Anu Creek.
The one you were just looking at is the S&N pit stop, Nunn and Sorensen.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
That one. So-
Yeah.
That's an abandoned gas station. Did they ever have to take the tanks out of there? No? That's what that was?
I don't know.
It's,
But they have some like erosion prevention kind of like concrete stuff that they put where you were just looking at. I'm not sure about leftover fuel or facilities like that. But yeah, Ray Bell's is if you continue to go down the shoreline, you'll see it.
They use vehicles.
Yeah, right there. Or over here more. There's Annie's. That's Annie Shades. So hers is like right there along that line. Yeah.
See,
Right, probably there. But I believe that when Obama came, right there, yeah, they were ordered to clean that. I can't remember. Something happened where they got issued a letter, I think, to clean that up, but I don't know. Obviously, that didn't go anywhere.
I'm learning a lot of letters get issued that don't need.
Yeah, because they're gonna get on the plane.
Yeah, all right, we'll see about this follow.
Yeah. Okay, so that's one spot up there, the south is.
This is an old cannery too, but not sure what ever happened there. Pearson's own.
Isn't it, I don't know.
I think there's,
Isn't it all apartment buildings now and stuff?
Above it is apartment.
yeah, this is an apartment here.
They use that space, but I don't know who owns it. Oh, I keep forgetting.
Maybe Pearson's.
Who's the current landowner that they said S&M, the old gas station there?
S&N.
S&M.
I would go on the city's website and look at the property ownership.
Yeah, Tab actually had that up on his laptop right now.
Anna Mae Sorensen.
She's passed. So I
And
don't
then
know.
the spot next to it, so it's like split up in a funny angle where it's like half hers and half Department of Transportation.
So, okay.
Interesting.
Yeah, oh, I see.
It's like, it doesn't have the building, the blue building in this,
So the property line's kind of right through.
right through
there.
it. Yeah,
Oh, really?
Which one is the DOT side?
this side.
The west side, okay.
At the end of the runway, probably, huh?
That would make sense. Well, no, actually, it's like the Anna Mae Sorensen one is like kind of walking in between the runway and the DOT lot.
Cassandra, that was you talking, right?
Yeah.
Do you remember, so I was trying to figure out exactly where that, you would send me the form that somebody had filled out to report the old dump site by the airport.
Right.
remember- That was,
It's an old landfill site at the end of the runway. So if you go, not the part that's the other side, yeah, the other end, somewhere in there. I was never shown where it is, and there might be people
I think
in the room that might have a better idea. I wasn't born around that time.
you're spot on though, Cassandra. I remember scrounging in that dump out there.
Honest God, I wouldn't have believed.
Yeah, that was a site that somebody had filled out back in when the Brownsfield program at BBNA had just started. That's on the inventory. Concerns about Agent Orange. I don't know what that's all about, but yeah, there was an old dump site over there somewhere.
Yeah.
And there's the even older airport, up by the elementary school.
Mhm.
Watertown.
Where the
I don't know how much traffic there may have been at that place or much airplane storage, but that was before my time too, even.
Oh,
School, that's the only one way.
yeah.
Huh.
It's now a courtyard for basketball and a playground. I don't know if that's represented in the Google Maps, but
And we build the runway. Trying to get everything over here and fixed it so they can fly out.
Terrifying.
Russell Nelson told us that story. Oh, was it Russell Nelson or was it? No, it might have been Bill Cheney. There's photos of original Dillingham over at the Bristol, what do they call that? Bayside Diner. At the Bristol end.
right.
Yeah.
I was gonna point out this old gravel pit. Up, where are we at?
On Aleknagik Lake Road.
There's a number of
Yeah.
things that old ground that's on our brownfield list.
We'll get oriented like is that much. You know, where's the old picnic thing? Down Blue Way, this is where we live.
There.
And this gravel pit.
Magnets.
So, and then you grab that.
And dumping and.
So a couple years ago, we had an oiled juvenile eagle hanging out in our yard. Denise just told the story yesterday that reminded me about that. My theory is that, and it happened in like what, August, September-ish, is that eagle is trying to get a dead bird out of this old gravel pit pond and probably got all the oil, could not fly, and making it down to our yard, hung out there for a week. We were feeding it salmon. And then called the Fish and Wildlife Service and they finally came over and caught it and took it off, and that's what they said, it was oiled. That's why it couldn't fly.
Is this gravel pit actively being used still?
No. Except by snow machiners in the winter. And then somebody built some little log cabin thing out here. I saw this winter.
Gravel.
Gravel pits are a common to brownfield sites. They're a common addition to brownfield lists. Gravel pits.
Yeah.
Sometimes they attract abandoned cars and abandoned appliances.
Yeah,
They call to their friends.
yeah, yeah, there are some abandoned appliances, right down in here.
And it has to flow right into.
Yeah.
Of course, it is.
I got distracted, I just
Yeah.
started looking at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Gus, we just zoom out just a little bit. And scroll up a little bit. This is the spring that feed that branch of Moon Creek.
Oh, okay.
This is our ski trail.
And it doesn't show any owner,
Or
just
say more
vacant
with the-
land, owner type private, but it doesn't say who's owners.
Okay.
And it construction stuff.
Used to be
Developed it, yeah.
Do you want the address of it?
Yeah.
5013 Aleknagik Lake Road.
So yeah, this branch of Moon Creek is fed by all these springs right here.
And not that far out.
Yeah. Yeah, that's our ski trail. You ski.
Yeah.
Yeah. You go right around there.
You said Nick Construction was a previous.
They're the ones that were developing it, yeah, when Lake Road was being paved, I think. It's built up to be paved.
Any,
Or
as far as the like burned or suspected contaminants, saying potentially oil.
Yeah. You know, I mean, they had equipment in there, sitting in there, whatnot, and that pond, you know, formed. Cause they dug down below the water table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
And that was just my theory after we found out that bird was boiled. They sent it into the recovery center where, I can't remember if it was in Anchorage.
Probably.
And so I figured there was another dead bird in that pond or something, and that juvenile eagle went down.
Yeah.
To the water.
All right.
It's my theory anyways.
So
And then all along our road, right here, this lot, this is a abandoned lot full of boats and vehicles, and there's more abandoned vehicles in there. Just sitting in the woods.
I think those are privately owned.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if the guy even owned the property when he pulled this little trailer and dumped his vehicles in there. I had no idea. I'm pretty sure Andy Straley owns that corner lot there.
Yep, he does.
It'd be great to see him get a letter.
It doesn't say anyone owns the spot next to him.
yes.
Vacant land.
Let's go back to this. Oh, yeah. This is our house right there.
Oh,
Get a letter for them.
Yeah. Don't look behind the garage.
I've heard they've got oiled eagles at their place.
Yeah, they feed them salmon.
It was almost dead. It just came. For a while.
Todd Palin is your guys' neighbor?
What?
What?
Todd Palin owns the lot right before you guys, it says.
Really? That was Alligator Jack's. So maybe,
He sold it to Todd.
Jack Morris, he was the land manager for BBNC, who developed our subdivision. So probably, Jack's son, Moore's, probably sold it to Todd for drug money. Is this being recorded?
Recorded thing.
It is being recorded, yep.
So, yeah, okay, so at this point, the list I have, we've got the Bingman property right up here. We've got 308 Central Ave as a potential site right here. We're trying to still locate the old airport dump site somewhere towards the north end of the airstrip.
You're on it, right where you're pointing, just beyond the paving. I did some scrounging back in the day in that old dump area.
Where
Oh,
That was the city's dump.
is it left or right?
If you follow the airport all the way to the end and make a circle that about that size, you're on it.
Right in there.
That's a big wet
So
spot.
maybe like in this zone.
That kind of looks like it could be.
It's a big wet spot there.
yeah.
So it was probably over there, closer.
You
to
may
the
have been
tree.
on a little higher ground, but that's the general area.
Okay. Yes, let's see what we can find out more about that.
It's gonna be good to you for sure.
And we've added SNN as a potential site to look more into.
Yeah.
Right down here. We've got spot south of the Moon Creek.
That looks like
This
it.
is the zone here.
It looks like it.
Yeah,
That looks like great golf.
they were dumping vehicles off the
Okay.
edge there for years.
Yeah, definitely looks like something's been put down there.
It doesn't, that section looks different than the rest of the coastline
Yeah.
immediately adjacent.
And then we've also added the old gravel pits to look more into. Right up.
What I'm gonna see.
Okay. I think that is a decent list, and I feel like with things, we can get a little bit more information and put the list together. And we'll see as we do more research, we'll see that it makes sense to actually put them on the brownfields list. The other option, I will try to look a little bit more into, Melissa, maybe we can think about this. Like sites that might not qualify for brownfields, but
What other options
are worth still communicating out and trying to figure out what we can do to reduce potential contamination into particularly the waterways in those spots, so.
Well, I didn't realize how big and how big.
It's very fun.
That's really big.
The gravel pit?
Yeah, I didn't realize how
Yeah,
big it is. Because I only go back there skiing,
Yeah,
so it's,
don't fall in.
Yeah.
yeah, I can't believe it.
So yeah, if you do think of any more, or you hear from anyone, you can send me an email, Dr. Chemtrack, we're putting up flyer, the QR code you can scan to submit. Just a little, Google form to fill out. I think, Sandra gave me some good feedback, we added some descriptions and definitions of brownfield sites in there. So definitely take a look. Thanks to you all. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Tab. Thanks, Mark and Denise and Fritz for joining us.
Do you know who owns the old?
May I ask a question before we break?
Definitely.
The Moravian Church?
I'd be curious about chain of custody or chain of responsibility, or for instance, on private property that may have been inherited by someone's long dead,
Yeah.
who there is no recollection of even recognition of brownfield sites in those days. Would the new owners who without any knowledge of what was going on there be responsible for cleanup if that was mandated?
Also a good spot for a coffee shop.
no,
I guess.
I would ask Nobby. There's a process with DEC about viable responsible parties, and it goes through a financial kind of situation to see if you're viable, as far as I know. But Nobby would know better.
Yes, I agree. I can,
you got no view.
Hear about that. We can try and get some more information. Fritz, maybe can I get your email address and I can have that
You
to follow up?
Tav has it.
Okay.
Yeah, I can give you all three of Fritz's email addresses.
Bravo. Send it to all of them.
Sounds good. All right. Well, thank you all. Appreciate you coming through.